Relax, the keyboard is off, the press box is closed, and the mic is just getting warmed up as the Guardian of the Blue Paint turned writer is about to enlighten us. The show where the writer is fresh off the presses and the ink is not dry. For this week's show, the Flyers faithful are hot to Trotz, but is he the answer? Welcome to the Hockey Writers Inc. Join Lance and Steel as we bring you all the latest on the Flyers.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of the Hockey Writers Inc. As always, I'm your host, Lance Green.
And I'm your co-host, SteelFlyers, and holy smokes, Batman! Look who we got sitting in, baby! Oh, yeah! We got the main man, Pots and Pans, from the O&B Puck Cast. That's right, folks. Isaiah is in on this great action we got going on for tonight. Thank you, sir, for joining, and welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks. It's my pleasure. Great to see you too.
Awesome sauce, man. We can't wait to get into it. We know we've got all kinds of great Flyer information going on here, especially when you bring in the standard. That's what we consider the O&B Puck Cast. Big props to you for all you guys do over there, especially to Chef and to the smooth Dan Silver and all the great guests that you guys have. And big props to the O&B Puck Cast, man. You guys are definitely big friends of the show, so thank you very much, man. Really appreciate all your support. And we look to you guys as the standard. So, you know, that's how we roll.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You got it. Folks, we are on, would you believe it, show number 76. And I got the perfect name. Are you ready for it? The Flyers faithful are hot to Trotz, but is he the answer? Okay. And I'm here to tell you, we had to bring in a very special guest to talk about this and a few other things, especially Lance's latest articles that he put out. Lance put 2 articles out this week, and we're going to dive into those 2 articles because that's exactly what we do here at the Hockey Writers Inc. So the first article that we're going to get into is, of course, posted to the Flyers Nitty Gritty website just the other day. And this article by esteemed writer extraordinaire is just dripping with the truth. The Flyers' constant over-evaluation of players throughout the years. And gents, I can't even begin to tell you how much I feel this has been a major issue for this team for the last 20 years. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. So Lance, why don't you break this down for us, and then we'll get into some questions that I have.
Yeah, for sure. This article kind of hit me as an idea to write this. Just because of the basis that, everything going wrong with the Flyers, they're in a disarray for sure. And this is one of another big problem that this team has had for so long. They get a good player and they want to promote him to be something that he's not, and want him to be more than he is. And it's just not so. And when you do that, you're setting them up to fail, because with the guys I wrote about, both Claude Giroux and Ivan Provorov here, they're not that elite level talent. They're what I think a step underneath, or they're a number 2 guy in that sense in both of their positions. They're not that elite level player that is and who you should be building around. They're a great Robin to somebody's Batman,
Yeah, we know all about that, right? Listen, Isaiah, I know you guys have talked about it on your show quite a lot with some of the guests that you've had on your great show, and about where you guys feel that Giroux ranks, where you guys feel that Provorov ranks, and where you feel that he should be slotted in, and where they should have been playing, or where they should be playing. And I know you have some opinions on this. And let's just start at the top with Claude Giroux, the over-evaluation of Claude Giroux. And Isaiah, I know you can shed some light on this.
Well, I mean, Claude was a number 1 center, and probably for a couple years there, from, I guess, maybe 2012 to 2015, you could say he was in the top 15 players in the league. But that didn't really last very long. And he was never, in my mind, the kind of guy you could build around. Even though his game is really solid all around, he improved defensively as time went on. and he received a boost when he moved to wing. However, there had to be other players emerging around him. And with the kind of money he was bringing in, it behooved them to do just that. They never did it. And they over-evaluated a lot of people. They under-evaluated Couturier for a while. And, you know, the whole theme of what you're saying definitely has more than a ring of truth. I think Claude's frustration is he really made a name for himself in 2012. Yeah. And it was very impressive in that Pittsburgh series. But really, after that time, it really was never the same player in the playoffs.
He just kind of dropped off.
If you look at his numbers, a lot of them are slanted toward or weighted toward his early contributions. And if you go from like after 2013 on, and his whatever they did make the playoffs, which was rather seldom, it wasn't that impressive. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact he wasn't quite as good as they said he was. And certainly, you know, post 17, he really wasn't, or 18. I forget what was his big return year.
17, I believe. Right. Yeah, his 100 points.
So after that, and also the fact that he never had players with him, and he wasn't such a catalyst. Like somebody like McKinnon steps on the ice, or Draisaitl steps on the ice, or some of the top elite players, even Barkov, who is an understated version of like a Bergeron kind of player.
Yeah.
This is an all-around player who you have to worry about on every area of the ice, and it's just not the same with Claude. He's a great player, and he may be Hall of Fame worthy. He may, but he was never the kind of piece that you could build around and have a lot of nice pieces around him. You had to have other stalwarts around him, and they never did.
Do you know, that's a great point, because we've talked about that ad nauseum about the fact that they never put anybody around him. All they did was put a pseudo guy the same as him in Voracek, you know, who was kind of the same player, just maybe a little taller. I mean, to some aspect. Yeah, you know what I mean? But he was more of a playmaker, passer, you know, setup guy than he was a finisher shooter, right? And so that's what, like, to me, I feel that Claude's best year was when he was with Jágr, because Jágr was that guy that could either A, clear the porch, or B, the finisher, right? And the guy just knew how to put the biscuit in the basket. And I thought that was some of Giroux's best time.
Well,
as far as statistically and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
Well, that's what I got to. I mean, I think, you know, he played 1,000 games here, guys. He scored 900 points. He's admirable numbers right there. All right, under a point per game still is usually the standard for more elite players, but he was right on that threshold. But he did so without help. When you look at some of these other guys, they're playing with some of the other elites in the league. They're playing with some amazingly talented players on their lines with them. All right, we're talking about Giroux, who had to, you know, play with was able to make Matthew Raffle a 20-goal scorer.
Raffle.
You know, Raffle, a 20-goal scorer, and Matt Reed as well. So, I mean, he had the talent in which to do so, but I don't think he was that number one player. And a player that I kind of compared him to in my article was a Nicholas Backstrom. And if you look at their numbers, it's very, very similar. Both drafted out of the 2006 draft class. Backstrom's played in a few more games than Giroux, but very eerie, similar numbers, goal numbers, assist numbers, very, very close. Both around 1,000 points right now. You know, right now Backstrom, of course, getting the chance to play with Ovechkin, you know, has the edge right now, but that's the difference. Backstrom was never expected to be the guy. He was a very talented player who may at one point or some point later on, and you know, after he's retired, may get a shot to the Hall of Fame. Who knows? But he has something that Giroux doesn't, and that's a Stanley Cup, because he was placed around players to be able to set them up. They saw and used him as he was and what he was best generated for, and was able to bring in, other players around him to play and him to be able to dish that puck off to that he's so good at. And Steel, you touched on, who the Flyers brought in. A 39-year-old Jaromir Jagr was probably the best player Giroux ever got the chance to play with. That's sad. And they tried to do so, tried to pay a guy in Voracek to come over who, like in my article, you just saw these games night in and night out on the power play where they're playing hot potato with the puck and nobody wants to shoot it because there is no shooter out there. All right.
Well, that's the thing. If I could just interject, I mean,
Sure.
If you want to draw a strict comparison, Backstrom plays with probably, I believe, the greatest single goal scorer in the history of the league.
Right.
And who does Giroux play with? So
himself. I mean, he's the marquee name. There's nobody else after him.
And that's what I would want to see. Obviously you can't change things now, but if the Flyers went out there and spent that $8.25 million or whatever they spent on Voracek and went out there and got a legit scoring threat to play 10 years with Giroux, I would want to see his numbers then.
See,
you know what I mean? I think they would be above Backstrom's because I think Giroux is a better player than Backstrom. But like you said, he gets to play with Ovechkin and Giroux gets to play with Scott Hartnell and Wayne Simmons as some of his best players, which I think he made to be something more than they were in my mind. I love both of those players, but let's face it, after Wayne Simmons left, he was beat up and everything like that physically through injuries, but he hasn't done much since, totaling 20, 30 goal seasons, I don't know, just something to think about, what ifs, the big what ifs. And it's evident by, what he's been able to do at what, 33, 34 years old now down in Florida. He's gone down there and in 18 games played, he went from a 0.73 points per game average with the Flyers this season to a 1.27 point per game pace in the last 18 games of the regular season. That's a big difference, especially when you're just jumping on a team that you've never played with any of these players before besides Racco Gudis or something like that and Robert Hagg on defense.
Right. And he did play with Bob too. Right. He did play with Bob too.
Yeah, but Bob's not really setting them up for any passes or outlet passes or anything like that. So yeah.
That's true. I'll tell you what, I've been watching Florida all year. But like long before Giroux got there. And the talent that's on that team. And it is no surprise to me at all that Giroux goes to Florida and he specifically picked Florida. So you look at that lineup and go, geez. And they slotted him right in. He doesn't have to be the guy. He's not the captain anymore. But the microphone is in his face every night, though. Right? Almost every single night after the game. Right there's the mic. Right? Giroux, hey, Giroux, hey, you know what I mean? And so, but I've been wholeheartedly impressed. I knew that Giroux was a good player. I just felt bad because he was never utilized correctly in Philadelphia. He was over-evaluated, and then the players that he played with were under-evaluated or over-evaluated or whatever, and they never gave him an opportunity to grow into that elite player that they built him up to be, like they're doing with Frost right now. Everybody's on this Frost bandwagon and, Frost this and, Frost that. And it's like, but he's been given every single opportunity and he hasn't been able to do spit. You have to come down to earth here a little bit. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, just for the record, by the way, the season that Claude Giroux, was a breakout season as a winger, was 2018. He had 34 goals, 102 points total, just for the record. Regarding Frost, I think Morgan Frost lost a lot in development last year. Mm-hmm. And with the truncated seasons because of the virus, that only complicated things worse.
Plus his
Morgan
injury.
Frost is a guy who speaks to the development isures of the Flyers as an organization.
Thank you.
And that's you could do a whole show about that.
We have.
But yeah, so have we. We had two shows with we had two shows with Shane Malloy, who's one of the biggest gurus for
Analytics.
scouting and hockey organization in general, how they should be run. But yeah, so I don't think they're really counting much on him. I think actually he could be a trade chip, but they could just be talking him up. But he should be like a 50-point player. There were some comparisons with him and Giroux because I had very similar numbers coming up, but
Right.
I think they were somewhat faulty. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but
Yeah. To touch on
and there you have
Morgan
other
Frost.
players.
Yeah, to touch on Morgan Frost real quick, if you watched the exit interviews or read them at all, Morgan Frost seemed unsure of what this team views him as and where he's going with this team in the future. He doesn't know where he stands with this organization, and he blatantly admitted that coming out of exit interviews with Chuck Fletcher. He didn't know.
You're not supposed to have an exit interview with the general manager. You're supposed to have an exit interview with the coach.
Well, that too.
The coach is getting fired though.
Yeah,
Okay,
but there's no coach.
Here.
Yeah, there's no coach. So,
So what? That's the other. Oh man. Anyway, so look,
We'll get
the
there.
over-evaluation of Ivan Pro. Look, we would go off on these tangents forever and ever. So I want to get back to the article here, and the other over-evaluation I think is Ivan Provorov, and I know that I'm also preaching to the choir about this too. Look, we all feel that he should not be playing on the power play. That he's at best a number 2. Top line, maybe second line defenseman, and should not be the number 1 guy, but is a good guy that you could have on the defense. And it's like they're doing it again with Provorov, like they've done with Desjardins, with Timonen, where they get that one defenseman and then they just run them into the ground because they don't put anybody else around them, and then they expect this one defenseman to be the be-all, end-all, and a lot of times these guys can't live up to it. I mean, I think Provorov was pushed into. I mean, he's playing 25 minutes a night. I mean, Isaiah, what do you think?
He's another example of Robin, not Batman. This was a judgment by Ron Hextall. I mean, you had Werenski was there at the time, and Werenski's more of an offensive player, but he's more sure-handed with the puck. That's a problem that Provorov has. Provorov has these inexplicable lapses in his game that bring to mind that there's seemingly like a coaching and development issue with him as well. I mean, they made a lot of assumptions with him, and I think that's kind of the underlying theme of your piece to begin with.
Yes.
And he's, we're going to talk him up. We're going to say, hey, he's our guy. He's our number 1. He's our McAvoy. No, he's not. But I mean, that's the problem, right? McAvoy is who they thought Bruins, and Provorov is not. Provorov is a guy that you really kind of need to shelter against the best competition, unless, of course, he's like a Matt Carl to somebody else's Chris Pronger. Matt Carl wasn't really a great defenseman, but if you have a Hall of Fame level player.
Yeah. That was a good combo,
Yeah. So. I mean, it's for sure. Exactly my point. Both of you guys hit the nail on the head there. The Flyers boasted this guy up to be their number 1 defender of the future, and 7th pick overall in 2015, and now he's 25 years old. He's had 4 or 5 seasons in the NHL now at least, and
6.
Yeah, 6. So
season number 7 next year. Yeah,
right. So is he Kimmo Timonen? Is he Desjardins? No, he's not. If you look at their numbers, Kimmo and Desjardins were able to pull along guys like Bundy and guys like for so long, and made those guys look good. I mean, hell, Desjardins had Chris Therien finish his career with a plus 130. You think Chris would probably tell you that he owes that all to Desjardins for sure.
He better.
But you look at the numbers here for Provorov, and they're getting worse. They're not getting better as he's getting older.
Yeah.
Is he a number 1 guy? No, he's not. Is he Victor Hedman? No, he's not. Is he Josie? Is he Drew Doughty? Is he Cal? Is he Adam Fox? No, those are number one defenders. Those are guys who you pay these big time deals to, like the Flyers paid Provorov, and build around them. And, Provorov is just not that. He's a number two. I think he's a solid number two. And a good comparison to him would be Ryan Graves, in my mind. The guy who went to New Jersey Devils after having a phenomenal season or two playing with one of the best defensemen in the world in, Colorado. And then he... Yeah. Right. And then he goes to New Jersey and his numbers are drastically different because now he's expected to be the guy and he's not able to carry that brunt of the team on his back. Mm-hmm. He was a good supplementary support player and flourished in that role, and he's not able to do so now.
I want to make a point here that I think is completely being missed. Provorov is a certain style of player, certain size, certain speed, and everything else like that. Well, the type of players that they try to put around him are these smallish, more offensive-minded players. Where, we all know that Provorov has the unoffensive-minded capabilities, but he's expected to be more of a defensive player. Mm-hmm. So now you got this Provorov who is playing way above where he should be playing, way too many more minutes than what he should be playing. Mm-hmm. And then you got all these other younger guys who are smaller, somewhat faster, and they're more offensive minded than defensive minded. Mm-hmm. And that is a recipe for the goals against average being over 3.
Well, let me add to that as well. Just one quick point why are the Flyers bringing up guys like Cameron York and Igor Zumala, who are left-hand shot defensemen, and expecting them, being young and not playing in the NHL, to step over to the right side right now? Wouldn't you ask your veteran player? In my mind, if I was the coach, I would ask the veteran defenseman to say, hey, we got this kid we're trying to bring up. We want you to help him. Can you slide across the ice for the last 10 games of the season and let him play in his natural position? Why are you setting these kids up to fail when Provorov is an established NHL veteran and should be able to slide over and play a couple games on the other side instead of having a rookie that is still, inexperienced?
Let me answer your question.
Go out there.
I'm going to answer your question.
Sure.
They didn't have the personnel. The personnel.
Well, sure.
The Provorov's handle is so bad on his natural side. Can you imagine what that would look like on his side? A horror show.
That's true. I mean, obviously they didn't have the personnel. The kids wouldn't have been up there. But yeah,
it's just. Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem if someone who's smaller, maybe more cerebral, with the puck. With Provorov is a good thing because Provorov is not cerebral with the puck. The problem with the Flyers has been and remains they haven't had good decision makers on defense. I can count them in the last 20 years probably on one hand. You have Timonen, you have Pronger. You had Niskanen for a year.
Yep.
Ellis for 4 games.
Yeah.
And David.
Oh, so you are counting Ellis for those 4 games then?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, this is a desperation. The Flyers' biggest problem is they lack the quality in defensemen that is, in my mind, is the most important, and that's consistent, calm decision-making with the puck. And until they conquer that hurdle developmentally, and they teach some of these left-handed kids to play on their right side so they don't make a mistake by going out and wasting all kinds of assets on Ristolainen because he's always a big, tough guy, and he's right-handed. You have to have a right-hander. No, you don't. And then you double down on the mistake by re-signing him, trapping you financially and strapping your cap. It's like they're just doubling down on stupid. So a lot of this is born of their inability to like look outside the box and think outside the box. Right side defenseman. That is bullspit. Okay, it's nonsense. I've watched this game for years. I know it's changed. I know it's fast. It's faster than it used to be, but there are plenty of guys that can play their offside.
But see, all you have to do is look at what's going on right now. All you have to do is turn on the TV and watch the games that are happening right now. All you have to do is do that. Okay? And if you are not building your team out to be similar to some of the teams that are playing right now, then all you're doing is spinning your wheels and you're just trying to, make a buck or trying to, I don't know what you're trying to do. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, as they say.
Exactly right.
There was a St. Louis model, which is like a lot of depth and like really like a lot of second line level players. If the guys are marginally first line, like Tarasenko, when he's at his best, solid goaltending, good structure. Okay. Carolina kind of did that in 2006, and then they added to that. And we talked about that with Shane Malloy. And then, of course, you have the star system, which is more dominant style. You have Tays and Kane, and then you have Crosby and Malkin. Just think of the teams that have been winning. Then you had the LA model, heavy hockey, Boston, heavy hockey with some stars. So it's,
But see, that's just it. That's just it. Okay, what has been the Flyers model the last 20 years? Like,
there's a family show. There's a family show. I can't say.
That's what I mean, right? Okay, right. So they're not even following a model. They're it's like they don't get it.
They lost their identity and they have no real sense of direction at all.
Ever since Mr. Snyder, God rest his soul, ever since he passed, you know what I mean? It's like this team just doesn't. It's like they're not the Flyers anymore.
This is toss the baton over to Hextall. It's really just. He wanted cerebral hockey players, but they all seem to have a very a lower ceiling than you would expect for where a lot of them were drafted.
Exactly. This is going to tie in exactly with Mr. Writer Extraordinaire's second article.
I was going to say, it sounds like a good segue to something.
You like it, man? To see how that works out?
It's like you did this before.
I learned from the best, right? I props to Jimmy and everybody. So, but just added a couple of days ago here to the FlyersNittyGritty.com website, Lance's first article of the week. Other teams' RFAs who are ripe for the picking that could bring the FU back to the Flyers game. And we were talking about this on the last show about putting that back into the Flyers game, a resurgence of the Flyer flu, if you will, okay? Because that's what this team has lacked for quite a while. I mean, I know, Isaiah, you can talk about this, but Lance, give me the reasons behind why you wrote this and some of the reasons why you picked some of the players that you did.
Right. So in this, it's let's be clear here. It's not to get a bunch of knuckle dragging Broad Street bullies of the 70s again. Okay.
No, we're not trying to advocate to go back to that.
150, 200 penalty minutes. Yeah. Yeah. It's not those guys anymore. The game has changed. You are right. But like you were saying earlier, if you noticed in the playoff series that are going on currently, they are banging. They're hitting finishing every check. All right. And these are guys from the first line on down to the fourth line. It's not just your bruisers anymore. All right. They are finishing their checks. They are going out there. They are standing up for teammates with dirty hits. The harder and faster you play, the more dirty hits will come out because you just can't seem to slow down fast enough when somebody turns around in the boards. So there's more physicality in this game. But the people that I picked to bring that FU, as Cam Atkinson so greatly put it in his exit interviews, that he thought that the Flyers needed back in their lineup, because let's be honest here, folks, if you watch the Flyers game, they were getting pushed around easily. All right. They were letting the the other team's offensemen stand in front of Carter Hart all season long. They were standing in front of the opposition for some reason, not trying to battle them out so Carter Hart can see the puck. They were not being allowed in front of the other team's net at all. They were being pushed easily away like they were, 12-year-old kids, just get on out of here, and losing puck battles in the boards. There's only few and far between that actually finish their checks. All right. And in that, they're letting the opposition just walk in, and with the Sandheims of the world just backing up right into Carter Hart. And these type players would bring that FU back to the Flyers game and show a little bit more grit, a little bit more toughness, but at the same time, be able to put the puck in the back of the net. All right. If you look at Tampa Bay, Pat Maroon, ex-Flyer, or ex-Phantom, because they never gave him a shot, is with Tampa Bay. They bring him in, and he won a Stanley Cup with St. Louis. Now he has three straight, two with being with Tampa Bay, and on his way to winning another one. But they also have guys like Corey Perry, who they added, who has over 400 goals in his career. He's a little long in the tooth now. You look at Minnesota, they got Ryan Hartman playing on the first line. There's that
phenomenal year.
34 goals on the regular season this year, a hard-nosed player that couldn't get off the fourth line or third line when some injuries occurred, maybe when he was on the Flyers, because they never gave him the shot. But who'd Minnesota bring in? They brought in one of the best fighters in the entire league, and Nicholas Deslauriers. So all this is being said is that physicality, that willingness to back your team up when the time hits. But all these guys that I mentioned in this article can score 15 to 20 goals a year, as well as providing that physical toughness to the game again.
Okay. So, Isaiah, the first name on the list is Lawson Krause. Okay. So, do you have an opinion about this particular RFA, and if you would like to see him in an orange and black?
Well, he's 24 now, right? Lawson Krause has been a whipping boy among the analytics crowd. He's been a Corsi loser, a possession nightmare.
Yep.
This year, he played in 65 games. He got 34 points, including 20 goals. And if you look at his advanced numbers with regard to wins against replacement, aka WAR, he really did start pointing upward. And he scored at a level, as he's about to become an RFA now, where he's going to want to get paid like he's a second liner, and that's kind of risky. He had a 15-goal season in 20 in 66 games. He's a big, tough guy. He's about 6'4", 215. And if you think he really, truly is trending upward, he's a left winger. He's really a third-line talent. The question is, for the money he's going to want, because he was making, I think, 1.5 or something. You figure if he's coming off a 20-goal season and he is ascending as a 24-year-old player, which is very possible.
Yeah.
He's going to want about $4 to $5 million. And he's really only shown it in one season in terms of being more, responsible and being more ahead of the puck, even though he's a negative player. So he was always considered a cerebral player, a coach's, favorite, be out there at critical junctures. But I don't know if that's really worked out very well at the NHL level. So my concern would be, coming off the 20-goal season for the first time, that he's going to want to make more than the Flyers can pay, given the fact that the Flyers need at least one more top four defenseman, need to also decide what's going to happen at center ice, because that's been an ongoing problem.
Yeah.
And and they are looking for a so-called top-end talent. So they'd have to get rid of players like Lindblom, And
I'm fine with that.
yeah, and other players, I would not have signed Ristolainen, and then we could be talking about, okay, let's bring in Lawson Krause and bring in a professional defenseman, and then we don't have to have that conversation. But here we are. So
see now, I'm on the same fence as that, because I looked at Ristolainen and I'm like, and I tried really hard this year, like especially after we did the show with Jimmy, right? And how he was talking about how Keith Jones was like this big fan of Ristolainen and how, you need to get Ristolainen in orange and black and blah, 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 and this whole 9 yards. And so after him playing for a year for the Flyers and everything like that, and, okay, you mean we gave up a number 1 draft pick for this guy? And then to double down on what, if I can quote the master, they doubled down on stupid by re-signing him, to not only re-signing him, but to term and with money.
Right.
Okay. I understand why you feel like you need to have a 6 foot something, 200 and something pound guy. And I will say this, before Ristolainen was in the lineup, guys would constantly go over the blue line there during warmups. The other team would constantly be going over into the Flyers end, chirping them up and getting in the faces and stuff like that. Many times I saw Tom Wilson skate over. Many times I saw a couple other guys from New York and a couple other guys from Boston skate over and blah, blah, blah. Well, that stopped happening when Ristolainen got on the Flyers, because he sat there on the blue line and just was waiting for them guys to come over. So you get that, and then you get some physicality, and then that's it. You get a very major minus player, and now you get somebody who can't even play top line minutes, and you gave up a number 1 draft pick.
All right, tag me in, Steel. Tag me in.
Yeah, right. Go.
Tag me in.
Go.
All right. So I love physicality. Everybody knows that. I love toughness. But as much as I like Ristolainen, he's a horrible statistic. Yes, he played for 8 years on Buffalo. He's a career minus 172, okay? Horrible statistics defensively. You wanted physicality. Yes, he finished his checks, but he does not go out and defend his teammates. He does not drop the gloves.
No.
All right. Wayne Simmons did that, and he was a $150, $160. All right. Scott Hartnell did that.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm at with Lawson Krause, though. Lawson Krause, I do think, is trending upwards. He unfortunately has played for the Arizona Coyotes for 6 seasons. All right. Tell me one player that's not a minus player that has, besides maybe Shane Doan, that played more than 6 years for the Arizona Coyotes. All right. But here's another thing as well. Yes, he might want to get paid for scoring 20 goals, but who the heck wants to play for the Arizona Coyotes when they're going to be playing in a college stadium of 5,000 seats next year? They're bouncing checks. They can't even pay players. Who the heck wants to stay there? Phil Kessel's gone. He's wanting to leave. He was asking for a trade earlier on in the year. They didn't let him do it. All right. What I like about Lawson Krause is, yes, he finishes every check. Yes, he's a hard-nosed player that will grind in the boards and everything like that. I agree with you, Isaiah. I don't think he's a top-level talent to replace Giroux. Obviously not. He's a decent player on a second-line Flyers team that is horrible. He's a third-line player on a good competitive team. But he does have potential to be more than he is right now, even though he scored 20 goals. I think he could be a 25-goal scorer. I think he could be similar to some of the players that you find in Nashville right now and have some of their success with playing that hard-nosed brand of hockey that they do there. So I really like this kid. Do I think the Flyers are going to be able to pull that off? No. He probably will be expected to be paid too much money. but they
Can I
need
throw
to
a little
find
something
somebody
in
like
here?
him. Sure.
Yeah, he's arbitration eligible, so that's
Okay.
They can
really
match
an
everything.
factor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that means there's very little control. If you sign him, he's almost guaranteed to make a certain amount, which means
Exactly.
you'd have to clear out a certain amount of salary for a guy who it's kind of iffy, like I said, with the priorities, they have.
See, I'm with you on that one, Isaiah. I'm with you on that one. Well, let's get into the other guy that you have on the list too, and that's Yarif Trenin. Okay, and so Isaiah, what do you think he's trending more in the orange and black side, or more in the Lawson side, where he might be a little bit too expensive?
This is a player. He was a rookie this year for Nashville, isn't that right?
Yeah, I think so.
He's been there 3 years. He's
3
been there
years.
3 years.
Okay, not a rookie.
He came up.
Well,
I mean, last year he's played like 45 games, and the year before that he played in 21.
Okay. Okay. So, Lance, why do you have him on this list?
He really had a breakout. He was really not much of a. He hadn't played many NHL games. He got in 80 games this year and got to 17 goals.
Right.
So I mean, I'd be lying if I said I knew a lot about him.
Okay.
Exactly my point.
Yeah, because I don't know a lot about him either.
So
the only thing is, Nashville's not hurting financially, and because he's coming off of his first deal, he's not going to command as much as somebody like Lawson Krause, who was a first-round draft pick and all that, and has been in the league. So he could be a bargain, and I'd be fine with that. They'd have to trade. Like, that could be a situation where you say, hey, you know what? We need some of what he has. He can play center, and I would trade a Lindblom for him if you think that he is someone who could add some toughness to the lineup, and he could be a more physical winger. See, there's a deal where if you think you have a diamond in the rough and he's just emerging, and it wasn't a fluke, caught lightning in a bottle season, then maybe that's something you could do.
Okay.
Yeah. So this guy, yes, he plays center, he plays wing, he's 6'2", 201 pounds, he's 25 years old, he's trending up, like you said earlier, at a later age. He scored 17 goals this year, 7 assists, 24 points, was a +7. He was buried pretty much on Nashville's roster, playing like third line minutes most of the year. But he really emerged as something more towards the end of the year. But same premise here. He finishes his checks. He's a hard-nosed, gritty player, unlike most Russians. He's willing to drop the gloves. I think he's went numerous times with Chara, and even stunned him once, and had Chara stumbling backwards when he caught him on the jaw. So this guy is only getting paid $725,000 this season. He finished the year with 191 checks, and like I said, he will not hesitate to drop the gloves when somebody comes in high and elbows somebody in the head or something like that. That is what this team's really missing. You can have Ristolainen, who finishes every check, but when he just stands there and lets Giroux, Voracek, whoever you want to say, in before they were all traded, to come in there and receive punishment and nobody does anything is beyond me. And
when you have to have a Lindblom drop gloves.
Right. When you have to have a guy that's coming off a, cancer recovery treatment there, drop the gloves because nobody else will. That's sad. And, Trenin is a guy that is what this team needs too, multifunctional. Like we said, he can play pretty much all positions, and he follows that Nashville mold really well. But in a sense, they can't pay everybody. Yes, they do have a lot of cap, but they also have to re-sign Forsberg, Luke Kunin, Cody Glass is a prospect that they might do. I like Matthew Benning. I think they should re-sign him. And they have to re-sign one of the next players we're going to talk about as well.
Okay.
And
cool.
defenseman Jeremy Lauzon.
Yeah, Jeremy Lauzon. Okay, so he's going to be. So Just a quick question here for you, Lance. What's the fascination with Nashville?
Well,
I mean, are you trying to find somebody to go back with Ellis? Like are you hoping that Ellis is going to be magically healed and everything's going to be cool?
God, no.
Or something?
God, no. Why do you trade? Why did they trade for a guy that had one season in which he played in all 82 games? Why would you trade for a guy like that with that many seasons under the books, signed for that long, and you bring in a guy to be the answer to play with Provorov that has played one full season in his career. Every other season he's been injured. That makes no sense to me.
No.
But I do like where Nashville is. Were they the best talented team out there? No, they were not this season. Did they play that roughneck brand of hockey that the Flyers were known for so long? Yes, they did. They had guys that could maybe touch 20 goals, but they played with physicality. They finished their checks. They didn't take dumb penalties. They stood up for each other. They fought as a team, a unit, and came together this season to be something. And,
and they made the playoffs.
The right. Flyers didn't.
That's right. So Isaiah, I know you got something to say here about Mr. Lazon. Yeah.
He has all the earmarks of a very typical third pairing defenseman. He's a Boston product. He came up in their system. He got coaching in Nashville. His numbers are nothing very impressive, whether it's from a Corsi perspective, straight plus minus, okay. And the WAR model is not that great. And I am not as enthusiastic about this player. I think he's a 6'7" guy. I think if you put him with the right player, and you could say this like a lot of players on the Flyers, he can function fine. Would he be an improvement upon some of the players they have, like a Nick Seeler or Kevin Connaughton? Yeah. But I think I would aim a little higher given the needs they have and the questions are surrounding Ryan Ellis.
See, that's kind of where I'm at with this. Okay. I get it. I know that this team needs guys that play a more playoff style of hockey. And what I mean by that playoff style of hockey is where guys finish checks, where guys are making sure that they're riding you into the boards, where they're winning the battles against, in the corners. They're doing that little bit of extra thing. They're making that extra stride to beat you to the puck, to not get that icing call. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain level of play with the teams that are playing playoff style of hockey and teams that aren't. You know what I'm saying? And I just think that Philadelphia needs to get more into that playoff style of hockey, because you don't have all these tools necessarily right now to do anything serious. And I have to say this, man, but this team has to stink for the next couple years. Okay, that to me, that's the only way this is going to get fixed, is that this team has to stink for a couple years and admit that they stink and get those draft picks, and then they can start building from there. Because to be honest with you, I think this team just needs to start from the ground up. They have no leadership in the front office. They have no leadership behind the bench, obviously, because they fired the coach twice. Okay, now there's going to be this next coach, and that was the whole premise of this show. Right. So I'm going to ask you, Isaiah. We did a show last week about who we felt the next coach of the Flyers were going to be. And this was before, obviously, Mr. Trotz was fired. And the Flyer faithful is all but screaming for this man to be hired. Now, I would please, sir, give me your take on who you feel should be the next coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. Do you feel it should be Barry Trotz, or any of the other plethora of fan favorites?
Well, I have 3 answers for you.
Oh, good.
Number one, and this will address some of the things you talked about. If it were up to me, and I'm is it Brian Roberts, who is still the head of Comcast? One of them.
Dave Scott, and then is ahead of the Flyers. Above him is.
I would do a Roto-Rooter. I'd clean out everything.
Thank you.
Okay. I would get rid of everybody. I would get rid of Scott. And I like Chuck Fletcher. He's a nice guy, and that's all well and good. I would get rid of him. I would keep some people that I think have some potential, like Danny Briere and some other people. That's fine. But right now, their inability to recognize that no matter who they bring in, they will have to ascend to the point where they have the qualities as a team that Lance, you're referring to, in terms of structure, discipline, and identity, all that. It just doesn't come overnight, and it has to come down from the top down. Yeah. Now I understand there are owners who bring those qualities and filter down, and there are other owners who kind of leave that to the general manager and other hockey people. Fine. Either way, either scenario, the Flyers need a top-down approach to somehow, some way become the Flyers again, instead of sloganeering like AV did with being effing Flyer. Which, since he was never a Flyer, how would he know what that is, right? So that was always phony to me. And of course, a good season, you forget about that. But after what happened and what ensued, we all remember that. So that's answer number one. Number two, okay, so coming into the real world, knowing that that's not going to happen at least this year, I would say that Barry Trotz is never the wrong answer as a coach, because he's one of the top 3 coaches in the league. It's never wrong to have Barry Trotz. However, I would say that if the Flyers are to say to themselves, like Steel was saying, they need to take a step back. This doesn't mean you blow up everything. What it means is you have a lot of young mid-6 talent, and you better clear out some of the other talent that isn't currently playing up to what they're capable of, or is probably, by the time you're ascending, won't be there. So in my mind, you could excuse the Flyers if they went with a guy like Jim Montgomery, who can bring a team along, who's overcome his own adversity, something Paul Holmgren faced, and something a lot of athletes have faced. And I could understand why they would pass on Trotz, although Dave Scott is going to push the buttons, just like he did with Quenneville. And he's going to want a name to get people all excited. And Trotz is like the last guy you get excited about in terms of the style of play, right? He's going to bring in and install a lot of structure and a lot of good things. I just don't know, because Trotz, after his Nashville tenure, has lasted, 3 years here, 3 years there. And you have to wonder in 2022, whether what happened in Nashville for 15 years, whatever it was there, really applies today. Because I say it doesn't. I think the game has changed since he left Nashville, and a lot of things have changed. So he could do a lot of good things here. It does a lot of the same things, maybe not quite as well. And include Mitch Korn, his goaltending coach. He's probably from what the Flyers have right now. I mean, Mitch Korn and Ian Clark in Vancouver are 2 of the best goaltending coaches in the entire league.
For
so
sure.
That would be an upgrade. It's always, you can never say it's a bad answer. It's a bad idea to bring in a quality of that type in your organization. However, the Flyers, no problem. To me, keep your eyes on the prize. The prize is this: you have to ascend to a point where you have a real window of contention to win a Stanley Cup. You don't just bring a guy, we're going to make the playoffs, we're going to lose in 1 round, and maybe we'll get lucky and win 1 round like they did a couple of years ago. That's not the point. That's not who the Flyers were, and it's not who I want the Flyers to be. So I think Barry Trotz can walk and chew gum at the same time, but realistically, if Trotz has them on a winning kind of edge where they're getting into the playoffs, they're going to want to add to that. And what they're going to do is they're going to bury themselves in more quicksand, and they're going to put a real ceiling on what they're capable of over a 5-year window. Me, I'd rather be more modest in my approach to getting a head coach, because maybe the slow pace of things will make them wake up and realize no matter who you have as coach, there's simply not enough talent, not enough high-end talent, not enough depth, and their development system needs totally reworking. It's going to take time. It's going to take a year or two to basically clear out guys like Ristolainen. It's a mistake. To me, I would trade him now. I would trade Couturier now or Hayes. You know, if Bergeron retires, okay, I'm going to Kevin Hayes and I'm going to Boston and say, hey, listen, we're going to do some different things here. Would you go to Boston if we can work it out? This is where I'm at. They need to clear cap space because they need, if they want to be in position to get these high-end, either make an offer sheet for the first time in a dog's age, or to even, go into UFA market and get high-end talent, what they want. You have to have cap space. You have to clear it. And to me, to answer your question, once and for all, I would actually go more modest with somebody like Montgomery, because that'll lead them down the path that I think will lead them to make the proper decisions long-term.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, you're preaching to the choir here, bro. Seriously. I mean, we all were completely against the popular vote of, look, here's what I think is going to happen, or here's what I feel is going to happen, and then here's what's actually going to happen. Do you know what I mean? So,
right. Well, that's kind of what I tried to present,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, unfortunately, I feel what's going to happen is I think they're going to we're going to have Chuck for another off season. Okay. And it's going to be bad. And there's going to be more mistakes and more bad decisions made. And this team is going to get buried in bad draft picks because we're picking 5th now. Right. So, and I've seen the list of players, right? There's maybe one kid, maybe, on that list. Huh?
One kid what?
On the list of draft picks that I would even remotely consider to be somebody that could come in and help the team right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is not that draft.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
The draft isn't really about that, except in specific years anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, We're talking about Connor Bedard next year, but I mean, listen, and look what Buffalo did, and they were so disappointed they didn't get McDavid, and I think they took it out on Eichel. They paid him and all that, but you could tell. I mean, when that relationship started off very poorly, because what happened? The owner counted on getting Connor McDavid, and when he didn't get him, you could see the sense of disappointment was palpable. And I don't know. I think in next year there's going to be so many players. You don't know how many times through the years that you think Connor Bedard is all this, and then here we are a year later, and there's somebody that just blows right by him. It happens a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me touch on like all the points that Isaiah made right there. To go all the way back, Lauzon, yes, exactly what you said, Isaiah. He would be a more solid third pairing defenseman than all the other trash that they threw in at the end of the year. All right. He's not a flashy guy. He's not a flashy guy at all. He's a guy that is going to solidify that defense on that third line. He's going to play physical. He had 224 hits on the season. He did so for Seattle. He was a very decent player in Seattle, but he's not going to be a point getter. In my mind, a good defenseman is one you don't notice on the ice. If you notice him, he's doing something wrong. All right. To go on to what you said as well for tearing it all down. If you look at what Vancouver did, and more specific, Jim Rutherford did, he saw something that wasn't working, and what did he do? He fired every single person in management, coaching, everything, all except the goalie coaching, because that's the elite level position that they do have in-house, and he kept that. He kept everybody that needed to be kept. He let go everybody that needed to be let go, and he brought in Bruce Boudreau, who was a person that could change it now and get them back on a winning path. Is it a long-term option? No, probably not. But it was a coach that could come in that had a very good win percentage and could turn around the club very quickly with the players that were in-house right now. And then he can work on bringing the right people in. As far as what the Flyers need to do, I agree with you. They need to bring in Barry Trotz? Would he help the defensive core and put in the correct systems? Yes. Is he going to be able to help that offense? No, he's not. It's a bunch of third line players up there. One 1 through 12 up there is third line players in my mind. There's no star power there. You need to build that. So you need to go out and destroy and fire every player development coach, everybody who's been associated with the Flyers. Get them out of here. Shel Samuelson, how long has he been with the Flyers organization? He's had 3 or 4 different jobs. They keep moving him around. Ian LaPerriere, the same thing. Get him out of here. Bring in people that can actually do the job well and know what they're doing, not just somebody that was gifted a job because, hey, you played for us 20 years ago. Thank you. But, Wayne Gretzky was a great player, but he wasn't a great coach. If you can't do the job, you should get out of town. So as far as your choice in saying, the guy coming over Montgomery, I think he's a better choice. But I do like the guy from Sweden as well, who's on a lot of big name coaching. Who's going to be the next guy boards? He has a different approach. And
is it Grunberg? Is that the name?
Yes. And I really like him. I think he brings a different aspect, but I don't know if the Flyers are going to be willing to reach out and do that. I think the Flyers need to go a more European route. You've seen the teams, like Tampa Bay and now Detroit going the European route and bringing those players over and having great success, as Stevie Y did it in both positions. And he's bringing back what he knows. He's bringing back the players that he played, the type of players he played with. So bringing in that coach that can bring that different systems in and different thought process besides the same old thing that's been some of these coaches that are on the list for 20, 25 years in the league now. Like you were saying, is it still relevant? Is their coaching tactics relevant? Because a lot of them haven't changed anything since they got the job the first time, in the NHL. Their systems are dinosaur theory now. It doesn't work in this today's faster, more competitive NHL. They're not hooking and grabbing and, all this stuff that they were able to do back then. A lot of players are faster and more skilled. And, these same old systems are just not going to cut it. They need somebody new. They need somebody with new ideas, new systems, new plays, and new life to this organization. I'm tired of the same old, same old people just coming in because, hey, I know a guy,
And not an ex-Philadelphia Flyer.
Not an ex-Philadelphia Flyer. Yeah.
Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Didn't we do talk shows and I wrote, articles about that too? Nepotism. Yeah, right. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. My selection was Chris Knobloch. I think he would be a great selection as a coach for the Flyers. I like his offense. I think he would help the offense. I like what he's done with his minor league team. I also like that he was able to come in here and take over for coaching duties for the New York Rangers and then proceeded to whip the Flyers 9-1 on that game. And I know that's probably a pipe dream because he's going to probably command a lot more money or because of their experimentation with Dave Hackstall. That probably won't happen with him. So, look, this is all subjective. This is all, we're just taking educated guesses here. We have no clue who the coach really is or who it's going to be. I think they actually already have him picked, to be honest with you. I think they already know.
It's probably somebody from Minnesota again, right?
Trotz got fired, that might have changed.
Well, okay, that's true. That's true because I thought, I'll be real honest with you, I thought for sure Nantucket was going to be announced as the next coach and the savior of the Flyers.
No, I don't see that. I don't see him. You got to remember, always remember and never forget, this is Chuck Fletcher's last hire.
Yep.
He's got to get this right.
That's a good way to look at that, Isaiah. That's a good way to look at it because I'm here to tell you, I have a feeling that come December, what happens in December in Philadelphia?
Coaches get fired.
Coaches get fired.
That's not happening. Well, it's not going to happen. You know who will get fired?
No,
it'll be Chuck Fletcher.
That's what I mean. Come December, some people are probably going to get fired because right around December is about our 20-game mark. Right? Okay, so you get where I'm calling with that. Right? All right. Anyway.
Yeah,
Look, we could probably
it's got to be done. It's got to be done correct this time around. Chuck Fletcher made some big moves this past offseason. A lot of them didn't turn out to be what he wanted them to be. They look good on paper at first, but he's got to get it right this year. Isaiah was right. He's got to get it right because his job depends on it. Surely, I mean, if he doesn't get this draft right, he's been able to hit it on 3rd, 4th, 5th round draft picks, but he hasn't hit one on the 1st and 2nd yet. That's turned out to be anything. If you look at teams like Carolina, they already have 1st round draft picks from the past year or two that are later on in the draft and already playing in the NHL. So it's not like you need to find a guy in the top 5, and those are the only ones that can make the NHL right from the gate. There's players later on in the 20s that have already made it to the NHL level, while Chuck Fletcher's been in there. So he's got no excuses. He's got no excuses at all. And trading away a 1st round draft pick for Ristolainen, wow. Yeah.
Just think the alternatives in that scenario. With the level of pick they could have had a guy like Sam Reinhart. I mean, if you check and see what Sam Reinhart was fetched, was a minor league goalie.
Yeah.
And the Flyers had plenty of those, and a lower 1st round draft pick. And then you look at what Boston paid for a guy like Hampus Lindholm, who's a completely better player than Ristolainen. So, these mistakes have to stop. Lindholm is one of my favorite players in terms of just being a professional defenseman who can play in all situations. He's not great. He's just very good, and he's not gonna crater like you see with Provorov. That's just not gonna happen.
I think that was a heck of a move by Boston to just swoop in and grab him and then sign him to a big deal right away too. Boy, that was pretty pretty spot on by Boston. But listen, man, we could probably prattle on here about all this stuff for the next 6-7 hours. What do you think, right? But we got to let everybody get going here. So, Isaiah, listen, we really appreciate you being on the show here, my man. Like I said, we look to you guys as a standard. And so really appreciate you taking the time to carve out to sit here and be with the lowly Hockey Writers Inc. guys. So appreciate that, man, really. And why don't you tell the folks your handle, where we can find you, and where we can get that great O&B Puck Cast show.
Yeah, O&B Puck Cast. You can check us out on Twitter at O&B Puck, where we have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. Just plug in O&B Puck Cast in YouTube. And we're on 12 podcast platforms, including the aforementioned YouTube, including Apple Podcasts. And check us out. We should have a show coming out Monday night. And it's always my pleasure to come and sit with you guys, Steel and Lance. And thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. We always get excited and look forward when we have you on, man, because you definitely are preaching to the choir here for us. So that's for sure. So really appreciate you being on, man. Really enjoy that. Lance, you got any upcomings? Any hints of news stuff?
I do. I have one I was currently working on just before I jumped on with you guys, concerning players the Flyers should stay away from in this year's draft.
Ooh, yeah, there you go. That's a good list. That'll probably be a really long list anyway. Why don't you show the folks there what you're wearing there, Mr. Lance? What do you...
Oh,
look at that swag going on there.
A little bit there.
Yeah.
Swag.
How about that? Listen, you can check the Hockey Writers Inc. out on every single podcasting platform that's out there. All you have to do is type in their search, Hockey Writers Inc. in Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Google, Amazon, Anchor, you name it, we're there. You just type in Hockey Writers Inc. and we'll come up, and you make sure you hit those 5 stars and you like us and you subscribe to us, because we're also out there on YouTube and Facebook. Also, check us out on the web at www.steelflyers.com. You can check me out at SteelFlyers52 on Twitter. Thank you to the great Isaiah for being here with us. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. The great main man, Pots and Pants from O&B Puck Cast. Thank you. The great Lance, screenwriter extraordinaire. Thank you, guys. We will catch you all on the next episode of the Hockey Writers Inc.